welcome inside the Red Mile Rundown. Episode 77 already, and we are going to do some more report cards today. Of course, I am your host, John Easthope of the Red Mile Rundown, and alongside me, as always, from FlamesNation.ca, Robert Munich. Happy Draft Lottery Eve as we record this. Robert, how are you feeling today?
Yeah, happy Draft Lottery Eve to you as well. Probably one of this is really sad to say, but the draft lottery on Tuesday is actually an extremely important day in modern Flames history. Because there hasn't been a whole heck of a lot of success at this organization since the lockout. So the fact that the draft lottery is a really big day for this team is kind of sad, but it's the reality. And my God, hopefully they win the first or second overall pick. That'd be fantastic.
You guys put out there on Flames Nation about how we think and where we think the Flames will be picking in the draft lottery, and I'm going to do nothing to upset the gods of hockey and just continue to put the positive chi. So if you're listening to this post-lottery draw, you can ignore my comment, but beforehand, come on, hockey gods, pick one would be fantastic. Let the Flames have something nice just once, please. Just once. Be cool, all right?
Yeah,
that's my only wish.
We don't have a lot of good things that happen to the team. Really, up until this point, I do feel with the new arena coming, I think the Flames have a great general manager in place. I like the head coach. There's a lot of good things in place, and they have a strong group of young players. So I'm pretty excited about that. But man, a cherry on top would be a first overall pick in a guy like Gavin McKenna. That would be something awesome.
Or let's just be blunt. Come on, Batman, rig it for us, please, would you?
Yeah, the Calgary Flames and Murray Edwards, they put up the money. The city of Calgary put up the money to build a new arena. The least you can do, Gary, is rig the lottery for us. You did it for Edmonton with Connor McDavid when they had Rogers Place built. Scotia Place is going to be ready in a couple of years. Let's open up that barn with guys like Gavin McKenna and Landon Dupont. Rig the lottery for us, Gary. Come on, do us a solid.
You even gave Toronto a stud when they had their one down year. Come on. Let's go here. Calgary Flames, one of a few, very few franchises to never pick in the top three. Those few franchises that also haven't done it are also very brand new franchises. So,
it's Vegas.
That's the list.
Might be the Flames in Vegas.
That's the list.
Holy
God. It depends what you count the Mammoth as. If you believe they're still part of the old Coyotes Jets history, then they have. If you don't, then they haven't. But it all depends how you look at the Mammoth.
And the wild thing is, you look back on some of the terrible teams the Flames have had in the late 90s, early 2000s, even, in the Treliving era, there was a few down years. And then recently, the team has been relatively competitive, but they haven't been all that good. So knowing the history of the team, the fact that they haven't had a top three pick is actually kind of astonishing.
Yep. And
in a bad way.
Yeah, in a very bad way. It tells you how mushy middle this Flames team has been for the last couple of decades as well, right? You're just never bad enough to be in that top 5, 6, except for the few we got with Bennett and Kachuk, and you're never good enough to win the Stanley Cup. So it's a lot of mediocre Flames hockey, and let's change that now. This would be a great year to pivot here. Quick question before we dive into today's episode, Robert, though. Flames might not get the top 3 picks. Are you going to be disappointed in picks 4 through 6, or should we still be pretty happy as a Flames fan? Because I'm pretty positive, regardless where the Flames end up, as excited as I would be for number 1 or 2 and getting McKenna or Stenberg. We were talking off air. There's actually some pretty good players in that 3 to 6 range that really would jump off the page at me. What about you?
You know what? I'm with you. I'm obviously you want to win the draft lottery,
yeah.
Of course. That's obviously the ideal outcome. But if they don't win it, even if they move down 2 spots to number 6, I think there's a lot of really good players available. I would argue probably the top 10 in this draft is very solid. And whether they end up with a Caleb Malhotra or Vigio Bork as a potential second or first line center, I think that would be super exciting. You have Carson Karls as a left shot D who I'm super high on. I love the personality, and I love the skill set and how hard he plays the game. Then there's Albert Smits, who's also a left shot D. Then you got Verhoff. You got, a guy like Chase Reed. There's going to be a really, really good player available for the Flames to take between 1 and 6. So, if they do end up dropping down 2 or 1, or they stay at number 4, I'm okay with it. I'm totally okay with it. I think they're going to end up with a really good player. I don't know if it's going to be the franchise-altering Quinn Hughes, Cale Makar, Nathan McKinnon type of player, but I do think it could be a solid member of the core moving forward, which is exciting. So yeah, I'm not too worried about it.
Yeah, you still need those solid players. You still need those second liners. You still need the second pair guys. You still need the guys beside the guy, right? And the Flames have a good opportunity to add either the guy or a guy right next to him in this coming up draft. A little bit of breaking news as we record here, Robert. I'm not sure if you saw this on your phone. The Flames have announced they've signed Theo Stocksalius to a 3-year entry-level deal, so that's pretty cool. Just a little side note on today's podcast. Second-round draft pick in 2025, signing with the Flames just now, coming across my desk from Pat Steinberg. So that's pretty cool.
I wonder if he's going to play in the dub, or if they're going to keep him in Sweden. It's going to be interesting to see. I think he's got a lot of potential. Stocksalius. He's a tall, lanky guy, and in his draft year, or was the year prior, he had a health scare. He actually was diagnosed with cancer and ended up beating it, which is fantastic. Was it cancer? Now I'm blanking.
I think so. I'd have to go look it up, but yeah, let's say I believe it was
health issues.
Yeah.
So yeah, he ran into some health issues, and I think that derailed his development a little bit that season. He ended up falling in the draft, but had he not dealt with health issues, I actually do think he would have been a first-round pick. So, there's another exciting player to add to the system, and it would be really cool if they brought him to the WHL, because I think the Calgary Hitmen own his rights. So, yeah, I like it. I like that move for the Flames.
And I wouldn't put it past the Flames to do something like that. They've done that before. They've done that back in the day with Keys and Kanzik. They did it with Hurtic. So they're not opposed to that kind of a move. So interesting there. But I kind of think it's good. It's a cool story. You're battling back from
it was thyroid cancer that he had.
Thyroid cancer. Thank you.
Yeah.
Battling through that to still have a good chance at a hockey career, and then becoming a second-round draft pick. Even if he never reaches the NHL, being a second-round draft pick is still a pretty cool story from where he came from. So awesome for the Flames. Let's dive into this week's episode, Robert. And I love the first topic on this one. Yes, we're going to get to some report cards here, but there were 3 key guys who were a big part of this Flames roster, this Flames team last year and through a good portion of this past season here before they were traded out. So it almost seems fitting to almost give them a bit of a talking point, looking back on how they've helped with the Flames here, maybe even grade their seasons. Of course, we're talking Rasmus Sanderson, Mackenzie Weegar, and Nazem Kadri. Where do you want to start here, Robert?
Well, we'll go in the order they were traded. So maybe we'll start with Andersson. Let's hear what you got to say about him in his season.
For me, it's pretty easy to sum up. I think he was on track to be the Flames MVP prior to being moved to Vegas. He was running a lot of the power play. He was the go-to guy, especially with Mackenzie Weegar's struggle. He was counted on to be beside Kevin Ball and to shut down other teams' top lines and heavy matchups. And I think he was doing really, really well. He's obviously looking for a contract. He was obviously going to be moved at some point during the season, and none of that was a distraction for Rasmus Andersson. He showed up, he wore his letter, he did his job, and I think overall he was exactly what you wanted from a player that you knew was going to be moved, and maybe a little bit more. If he stuck with the Flames all season long with that type of play, for me, it'd be no question to be giving him an A grade if we were to grade him out with a letter. And I would feel very good about that. I really liked what Rasmus Andersson did, his approach, his professionalism, and now he's finding some success in Vegas in the playoffs, and you like that for a guy. And so for me, Rasmus Andersson, it's a good season for the Flames, a good contributor for the Flames. Probably a bit of the reason why the Flames picked up more points than they probably should have mid-season there as well, when he was playing at a very high level before he was moved. So for me, good season from Rasmus Andersson for the Flames, and you really couldn't have asked for more from him.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, so he played 48 games with the Flames this year, 10 goals, 20 assists, 30 points. So he was, about
it's good for D, man.
Like 2/3 of a point per game kind of thing. Had he stayed with the Flames, he would have shattered his career goals in a season mark. He scored 11 twice previous to that. So yeah, he scored 17 on this season. He probably would have been in that 17-20 range had he stayed with the Flames, running the top power play. So yeah, I'm with you. I thought he was really good. He was easily the team MVP, easily the best skater on the Flames, and thank goodness that happened, because the year prior was a disaster. he was not good. He did not play up to the level that we all know that he could. He had the -38, chewing on minuses. Look at the classic quote from him. And the fact that he was able to rebound in a season where it was a contract year, it was a year where the Flames were going to have to rebuild his trade value and move him. The fact he was able to step up, get his game back, score goals, be an important part of the team, I think was a huge reason why the Flames were able to get the trade return they were from Vegas. So, good on Rasmus Andersson. And, looking back on it, it's kind of silly the discussions that people were having heading into the season. Is Andersson going to be a distraction because he's a pending UFA? Like, does he want to be here? Looking back on it now, those were silly discussions to have because Andersson was nothing but a pro. He was a great leader on and off the ice this season for the Flames. So I give all the credit in the world to the guy. He stepped up. He was a total professional. He rebuilt his trade value. And on the way out, he was nothing but complimentary about the city and the team and how the team, respected him and how they dealt with this situation. So, not only were they able to get the giant trade return for him, but then on the way out, I also think it helped the Flames' reputation that, guys like him and Kadri were so complimentary of the organization. So it was kind of a great year for Andersson and kind of in turn a great year for the Flames and their asset management of him. So I think it worked out for both parties. So yeah, it was a pretty good season for him.
So let's jump over to Nazem Kadri. He was traded, of course, to the Avalanche at the deadline. He was a last-second deal for all of us on Twitter, refreshing and freaking over the Ryan Strome trade. But 16 games with the Avalanche. He had 9 points for the Avalanche before an injury kept him out of the lineup for the last little bit. But what do you make of Nazem Kadri's season? For me, it was a bit up and down season, but overall, he was really good, especially at the beginning of the season and trying to help push this Flames team along. He wants to win, and he wants that puck on his stick, and sometimes it could be a detriment to his game, especially in Calgary when he doesn't have that support here. But what do you make of Nazem Kadri? And if you were to grade him out, does he get a good grade from you?
Yeah, I would say, if I were to give him a grade, it'd be a B, and that's kind of based on expectations heading into the year. I thought he could be a, high 20s goal scorer, kind of be in that 50, 60 point range. We have to keep in mind that, he's 35 years old. Like, he is getting up there in age. Yeah. So he was like right on that pace to be that type of player for the Flames this year. He had more assists than goals, in previous years. Last year he scored 35 goals, 32 assists, but with the Flames this year it was 12 goals and 29 assists. So he was still in on the offense and he was still generating and creating, which was great. He didn't score as much, but that's totally fine when you're setting up your teammates. But yeah, I mean, overall, I thought he was good. I thought he was kind of right at expectations this year. I mean, you could take a look at some of the defensive numbers and they weren't great. The Flames got badly outscored when he was on the ice. He's a -27 in 61 games, which was one of the worst marks in the NHL prior to him getting traded. But overall, I mean, it's kind of similar to Andersson. I thought he had a really good attitude this year. I thought he was very classy with the way he went out, and he was very complimentary of Craig Conroy and the Flames. And, he gave it his all on most nights. And that's kind of all you can ask from these types of players, especially veterans who are playing on a team that's losing. And, a guy like Kadri, 35 years old, he doesn't have that many kicks at the can left. I mean, between Toronto and, the first part of his time in Colorado and then Calgary, outside of like the one cup run, he hasn't had like a ton of playoff games, 57 playoff games for a guy that's played 1,063 regular season games. Isn't a whole heck of a lot. So I could understand why he'd want to get out of Calgary and why he'd want to go and play in the playoffs. And, once again, I think Conroy did really well in that trade return, and Kadri played a big part in that based off the way he played this year. I mean, he still showed this year that he can be a difference maker and he can be an impactful player for a playoff team. So yeah, between, Kadri playing well, Craig Conroy cashing in on the asset, and just kind of, how smooth things were with the trade and how things ended, I think it was another good year for Conroy, for Kadri, and then in turn a good trade return for Craig Conroy. So yeah, another solid season for Nazem Kadri. I don't know if this is like the time to talk about this, but like, does Kadri have a legacy in Calgary? Like how do you look back on his time with the team?
It's a great question. That's a really good question.
Yeah, you know, we should save that for like more the dog days of summer, maybe.
Yeah, we'll dive into it a little bit more because I think there's a lot to that. I think there's a lot of ways you can go about talking about the legacy of Kadri because he was brought in right when they were changing over from the Gaudreau era type of player in that team there to this new era of the Gaudreau, the Hunerdeau and Weegers and so on and so forth. So an interesting change in Flames era at the same time as Kadri bringing in. So that's a good conversation to have. We'll definitely table that one. For his season this year as well, though, Robert, like you got to remember, and you said it there perfectly, it's your expectations of him coming into the season was he was going to be a solid player to help drive the top six and produce some points. And yeah, he had a bit of a tough stretch in there where he wasn't really producing a ton of points. But if you're to base off your expectations of what Nazem Kadri was, I think a B plus is a fair grade for him if you were to grade him out. And that's what you wanted from the guy. And he put himself and the Flames in a good situation when it was time to trade him, that they were able to get a deal done with Colorado and they were able to capitalize and bring him up. The Flames did better in that trade than I thought they were going to, given the contract remaining for Nazem Kadri. And you got to tip your hat to Craig Conroy for getting that done as well. But overall, you got to be pleased with what you saw from Kadri. Just not even just this year, but almost overall from everything we saw from him, except maybe that last month under Daryl Sutter. That's a completely different conversation. But more on Kadri later in the summer. The third guy not here anymore, Mackenzie Weegar. I don't want to be too harsh on the guy because I think we both like this player. We think we both have like what he brought to the Flames when he was part of this team, but he was pretty bad this year for the Flames. He chewed on the minuses that Rasmus chewed on last year. He was minus 35 with the Flames in the 60 games that he played before being moved to Utah. Only 21 points in those 60 games. And it just anything that seemed to bounce the wrong way or turnovers like that, those type of situations always seem to have involved number 52 with the Flames. And if you have your expectations coming into this year with Mackenzie Weegar, what you thought he was going to be, his aspirations for Team Canada at the Olympics, the trying to get back to the playoffs, you got to sound kind of harsh if you're going to grade him out because it wasn't pretty. What say you with Mackenzie Weegar and his time with the Flames this year?
Yeah, I mean, my expectations for him heading into this season was that he was going to continue to be a top pairing level defenseman like he had been the last 2.5 years of his Flames tenure. And, he's probably the only guy in the team that I would give an F to because you look at a guy like Hunerdeau, he had a terrible year, but, your expectations for Hunerdeau are significantly lower than when he got here. My expectations for Weegar were quite high. And like you said, like this was a year where he wanted to make Team Canada and he wanted to be in the conversation for that team. And with the way he played, he wasn't really even close. Like I don't even think he was close to making Team Canada that year. And it was hard to watch him this year. I really thought his skating and his mobility took a big step back this year. Even just things like going back for pucks with a forechecker on him. He wasn't getting to those pucks first like he normally would. Even getting to loose puck battles, he was normally the second guy there, which puts him at a disadvantage. He turned the puck over a lot. He wasn't a dynamic offensive player. He wasn't making as many, strong tape-to-tape passes. He wasn't getting as many, good shots to the net. He wasn't very effective on the power play. It's just like everything that we were accustomed to seeing from Mackenzie Weegar took a step back this year, and it was tough to watch. It really was, and I felt bad for the guy because I really like him. He comes across as like an awesome human, and I think he's a big time leader, on the ice, off the ice, and he's a good representative for the city of Calgary. So I have nothing but respect for Mackenzie Weegar, but just calling a spade, his on ice play this year was terrible. And to be quite honest, I was very surprised that Craig Conroy was able to get the trade package he was. It was Olli Maatta, 3 second-round picks, and Jonathan Castagna. Mm-hmm. That's a major haul for a guy who's 31, 32. Yeah, he's 32 years old, going to be 33 next season. He's got 4 or 5 years remaining on his contract that pays him a lot of money, $6.25 million. Getting a haul like that for a guy having probably the worst season in 5 or 6 years, that's super impressive work by Craig Conroy. Like really, really impressive work. A job well done by the GM to cash in on, Mackenzie Weegar's a declining asset. And we saw it in Utah too. I didn't think he was all that effective in Utah. I know he scored a couple goals in the playoffs, but you watch him in his own end, he really struggled at times, and I think he struggled with the speed of the playoffs as well. So tough way to finish his tenure in Calgary, because he was great up until this season, and he's a great guy. So yeah, it's kind of hard to say like you give him an F, but that's kind of what I'm giving him right now.
We talked a few episodes ago about guys that would need a really good summer, who should have a really good summer. And if he was still here, I think he'd definitely be part of that conversation, because he definitely needs a reset. It's not often that you can get that type of trade return. Plus, you don't have to retain a ton of salary for a guy like Mackenzie Weegar to move him out. And the Flames, I think, capitalized on it. And I hate ragging on the guy, but if you definitely are talking on ice package, he was for me easily the most disappointing on ice player this season. And you don't like seeing it, obviously, and I hope that he can rebound for Utah, because that Mammoth team was fun to watch for the most part as well, and hopefully he can rebound and have a better end of his career than he did here in Calgary, because that's a tough way to end, like you mentioned, Robert, and I think the F is very fair.
I hope he rebounds in Utah as well. Like I said, I think we're both huge fans of the guy. I don't know if that was the player Utah should have gone all in on. I actually think it was a bit of a mistake for them, just based off the age, the way he's moving, the way he skates, the season he was having in Calgary. I think they could have spent those draft picks, prospects, and Olli Maatta. I think they could have spent those assets maybe a little bit better than what they did. Like, is there another way to get a Sergachev type of player when they did a guy in his mid-20s who still has a lot of good hockey left? I don't know how much like first pairing minutes Mackenzie Weegar has left in him. Like, maybe he could be a solid second pair guy for the next few years, but I think Utah needs a guy to be that first pairing player who can play those shutdown minutes. And man, I don't know if Weegar is going to be that guy.
That type of move for Utah has definitely signaled the ownership really wanting to make the playoffs, the ownership really wanting to make a splash. And it sounds like that was the biggest fish they could get after. But I'm with you. Like, as nice as Mackenzie Weegar is and what he can bring, the Mammoth need something a little bit different on that back end. They're so close to being a really good, complete hockey team. They should make one or two key moves here, but they spent a lot of assets on Mackenzie Weegar, so they put a lot of eggs in that basket for sure.
Yeah, and they were right to make that type of move. I
100%.
just don't know if Weegar was that guy.
100%. Anything else on these three guys before we move on, Robert? Because those are three veterans. Of course, Andersson was here long term versus those other two. Weegar had a pretty good tenure in this organization as well, with the Kadri coming in after Gaudreau and stuff left. Anything left on these three guys here? Because there were three good veterans for the Flames for the time they were here.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, they were good players, and I'm very happy that the Flames made the decision to trade these players and go down the road of a rebuild. I think that was the smart thing to do. I think it was the obvious thing to do. I think everybody in the hockey world thought that was the way they should go, but it took them a long time to get there. But they got there, and that's all that matters. And they cashed in on these players. I mean, once again, the trade returns that they got were very impressive. So yeah, I mean, shout out to the players. They worked hard. It's unfortunate that core in this era of Flames hockey was so unsuccessful and they never made the playoffs. But at the same time, these guys, they did work hard. They were good people. They were good leaders. Like, I don't really think you could have asked more from any of those guys. So yeah, just a shout out to them, and yeah, shout out to Craig Conroy for getting the job done.
Yes, nice that nostalgia didn't win out for once in this organization. Nice little change. All right, let's move on to today's letter grades for the current Flames here. I'm going to go a little bit out of order of the ones you sent me to, because we talked about disappointments, and I kind of want to get this one out of the way so we can be a little bit more positive toward the end of the episode. I talked about how disappointed I was in Mackenzie Weegar, and there was only one player on this roster that came very close to matching the disappointment in Mackenzie Weegar that I had, and that's number 47. Connor Zary, for me, came into the season. I had some high expectations. Anybody who listens to this podcast or listened to me in my old podcast or talked to me online, they know how much of a fan I am of this player. So maybe my expectations were a little higher than some. But I really thought Connor Zary coming into the season could be a guy to grab a top six role. The job was open. The job was there for the taking if he took advantage of it. Sure, Ryan Huska bounced him around the lineup, and I think a bit of that was because Connor Zary couldn't grab a spot, couldn't find some success anywhere in this lineup. I went harsh with Connor Zary. I gave him a D, Robert, because I just am very disappointed in the season he put forth. I don't think injuries can be an excuse for him anymore. I don't think it is anything other than between the ears for this guy, and you're a pro hockey player. You have to take advantage of opportunities given to you. And so versus my expectations for Conjure coming into this year, he didn't even come close. I got to give him a D, and I hate doing it to him because I love the guy, but disappointing season for me for Connor Zary. What about you, Robert?
Yeah, you're right. It was a disappointing season for him, and I think we had a different view on him heading into the year. I was actually a little bit down on him, and the main reasons why, like if you went back and listened to the preseason predictions episode, I was saying that I thought he was going to take a step back because there was no role for him on the team, and I was worried about his skating. And so because my expectations for him were a little bit lower heading into the year, my letter grade's not quite as harsh. Like I gave him a C because my expectations were a little bit lower. But like even heading into the year, I think my projection for him was around 35 points, and he put up 25 in 74 games this year. So really disappointing from an offensive output perspective. And it's the old like chicken or the egg conversation with him. Did he struggle because the coaching staff didn't put him in a position to succeed, or did the reason why the Flames didn't put him in a position to succeed is because he didn't earn it? And it's a little bit of both. But when it comes to a player like Zary, who is 24 years old, I think if you're the coaching staff, I think you should have prioritized giving him a role and allowing him an opportunity to succeed. And even if he struggled out of the gate, like just continue to put him there and continue to put confidence in him and say, like, even though you're off to a bad start, we still believe in you. We still believe that you can be a really good player. And I don't think the Flames did that. I think he got off to the terrible start. I think it was like 4 points in his first 25 games. Like it was really rough. And I think the coaching staff almost gave up on him a little bit, and they were healthy scratching him. He was on the fourth line, and he was on the power play. He wasn't on the power play. He was on a second line one game. Then he's on the fourth line one game. He's at center, and he's at wing. Like it was just a mess. The whole year was a mess for Connor Zary, for the coaching staff when it comes to handling him. And, like listening to people around the city, like the number one Flames insider right now is Pat Steinberg. And even Steinberg's been putting out there that like, hey, maybe Zary could be put in a trade package this offseason. And I don't think Pat's saying that because that's his opinion. I think Pat's saying that because he's heard stuff. Like I think Zary's future with the Flames is very uncertain right now. So yeah, very, very disappointing year for Zary. I'll give him a C. And, if he is back with the team next year, he's got to take massive steps forward in his skating. He's got to take massive steps forward in getting a little bit bigger and stronger. And if he does that, I think there might be the potential for him to be a half decent player. But if he comes back with the same skill set, I think he's in trouble. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do with him in the offseason. Like, did you lean one way or another in terms of trade or keeping him?
For me, it's 6 1 half a dozen the other, right? If you're trading him in a package, you're bringing someone in that you can get something out of. But if you're keeping him, you can try to get something out of this player. So I think either way, there's a player going to be here that needs to take a step forward. So if Connor's with the Flames next year, he's got to take the step. He's got to do, and he's not the same kind of player, but he's got to kind of do the Matthew Tkachuk thing. Matthew Tkachuk doesn't have good boots. He's an awful skater. But he's learned to play the game at that high level because of his smarts, because of his positioning. He's able to get from A to B good enough that he's able to use his other skills. For me, that's where Connor Zary's at. How can you use what you do have to get to A to B and to have the success that you can find at this level? It's all on him. This is his offseason to prove it. He has to come to camp ready, even if it's with another team, Robert. Say he ends up in Detroit for some reason. He's got to go show those guys the same thing he's got to show the Flames, right? He's got to take advantage of the opportunity given to him, because if not, he's not going to be in the NHL for long unless he wants to go play at the worst teams in the league and be a bottom six over there. Like, you got to take advantage. So as harsh as we are on his season, that's just where we're at. He earned it. You were given time with Michael Backlund. You were given time with Nazem Kadri at times. You've got to take advantage of something, show the coaches something, and I think that's why Huska kept moving him around. Yeah, sure, Huska could have given him a better role more consistently, but like you mentioned, chicken or the egg thing, a little bit of both, and you just got it. This is huge for Connor Zary next year. It could really make or break his NHL career. Let's be honest here. So,
yeah, and the thing that he needs to worry about is that, you know, there's a lot of forward prospects coming up in the system, like his long-term spot on the team. I'm not necessarily talking about next year. I'm talking about 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road. You know, Sam Honzik, I would argue, has already passed him potentially. And then you got guys like Aidar Suniev, Wittenbach, Cullen Potter. You know, if they win the draft lottery, a Gavin McKenna or an Ivar Stenberg might join the team. You know, Cole Reshny is going to take a center spot. If they re-sign Morgan Frost, you know, there's another center spot gone. And then, you know, Theo Stocksilius and, you know, this year in rounds 1 and 2 and 3 with all those picks they have, they're probably going to take another couple forwards. Like it's almost like an endless pipeline of players that he needs to worry about coming up in the Flame system right now. So yeah, he's in trouble in terms of his spot with the team and the organization. And you know, when it comes to like the trade or keep him conversation, if there's a package out there, like if there's a way for the Flames to put together a few of the picks that they own in the first 3 rounds, and you know, if Connor Zary is the piece that puts it over the top to move back into the top 15 of the first round or something like that, that's something I would personally be very open to, because it feels like Connor Zary's future with the team is very limited, and it almost feels like it's not even going to be a thing. So if you could throw him in a deal, either for another draft pick or throw him in a bigger package to move up in the draft, it's something that I would seriously consider if I was Craig Conroy.
Yeah, it feels much like the Andre Mangiapane, where it's just like, okay, I don't think there's a long-term future here. Let's move him along for some assets that are actually going to maybe help us down the road here. So very much a crossroads for Connor Zary after a very disappointing season 447. I'm interested in this next one here. I'm going to let you go first right before I respond, because I might take some heat on my take with Matthew Coronado. Interesting season for Matthew. A lot of expectations for Matthew and the steps that he would take forward. What do you make of Mr. Coronado's season? He got a lot of run there in that top 6, and interesting season. I'll just leave it at that for now.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people are down on Matt Coronado. I'm not as down as a lot of fans are in him. I actually thought he was pretty solid for most of the season. And had he had just a little bit more finishing luck, like I might put together a video of some of the chances that he had this year where he wasn't able to score. Like these were like spectacular scoring chances that I think in a normal season where things are going his way, he's able to bury these chances. And instead of being a guy that scored, 20 goals or 18 or 19, however many he scored this year, I think he would have been a 25. Okay. Yeah. So I think he would have been like a 25 to 30 goal scorer had things gone his way. And I thought the process was good. Like if he continues to play like he did this year in upcoming seasons, when he's playing on a line with more talented line mates for a full year, like next year, I'm thinking, what if he's on a line with Morgan Frost and Matt Baker-Itten? 2 guys that are good distributors. Can they set him up for more goals this year? Like, and then in the future with some of the talented players coming up in the system, like I think he'll be playing with better players than he has the last couple of years. And I think that's going to make a big difference. So overall, I know the production wasn't fantastic, but once again, I like the way he played. I like the process. I thought he generated a ton of chances. And once again, if it was just kind of a normal year and things were going his way, and his shooting percentage was at kind of a career normal, then I think he would have been a right around a 25 goal guy. And on a team that scored the fewest goals in the NHL, I think that's actually pretty impressive. So I give him a letter grade of a B. Once again, I thought he was solid, and I'm pretty convinced that he can be a 25 to 35 goal guy for the duration of his contract, especially knowing that the type of talent he's going to be playing with in the coming years.
Interesting. We both gave him a B grade, but I got there in a different way because I think my expectations might have been skewed on this player as well. I expected him to be a better player offensively for the Flames this year, and I get all of the close chances, but good players find a way to finish close chances, and there's only so much luck that plays into this game as well. He dropped from 24 to 18 goals from last year to this year. He dropped from a +6 to a -29. So for me, that's where his game is dropping off. He's not helping himself out as much as I'd like to see in other zones to give him those more opportunities, to help himself out, to be a better player all around in this game. Yes, I know he's a scorer. That's kind of his game is to shoot the puck. He needs to be a little harder to play against, in my opinion. He needs to be a little tougher in the hard areas and create a little bit more of your own luck rather than just relying on the shot from perimeters. Get inside a little bit more and muck it up a little bit more for me. So I expect him to, like you, I expect him to be a 30-ish goal scorer in between their give or take 5 goals. He has that ability. He has one of the better shots on this team. He should be on your top power play. He should be in your top 6, if not your top line. He needs to be a go-to guy for the Flames now moving forward, and he has that ability to do so. This season, I just didn't see a lot of that extra fight from Matt Coronato. He should be more feisty of a player. We've seen it before in the past from Matt, and I really want to see him take that extra step next year. So I'm not down on Matthew Coronato. I just expect more from Matt Coronato because we've seen it. We know he can bring it, and it was a tough season for all of the Flames on a whole. And Matthew was no different here for me, but I was still nice and gave a nice B grade because he still produced, like you mentioned, Robert, he still produced quite a few goals on a team that didn't produce goals, and that's pretty impressive from 27 here.
Yeah, and like it's hard to score goals when you're playing with Michael Backlund as your center, or Ryan Strome, or even like a guy like Kadri. Like I know he had more assists this year, but he's not a traditional playmaker. Like there's not a lot of guys that get him the puck. Mm-hmm. And like I agree. Like there are times where he can create more chances on his own, and he can be harder to play against. I think those are all fair criticisms of the guy, and he's still quite young. I think he's going to be able to turn it around. Mm-hmm. And like I said, I do think he's going to be a really consistent scorer for this team. And with the cap going up the way it's supposed to, I think his contract is going to be, pretty solid for, the next 6 or 7 years here.
It's funny I say all that, and he still led the team with 45 points this year. So it's not that I don't like Matt Coronato or the season he had. I think there's more in there from him, and I think the expectation into this season were to build on last year's season, and she just want a little bit more. That -29 that really sticks out for me. I know plus minus is what it is, but that really sticks out to me on a team. You go from a decent plus side of the things to a deep minus side of things. Just a little bit has gone wrong for the Flames this year, and did for Matt Coronato as well. But I really expect a rebound from him next year. I think the expectations for Matt next year, I think, are gonna be big because he really did play a lot of top 6 minutes this year for the Flames, and he should continue to do so. And like you, I wonder what happens if they put him with a guy like a Matt Fagerson, a guy who can get him the puck a lot more of what he can do to end. Sort of finish off those chances at that end of the ice. So it'd be interesting for Matt Coronato. He's an interesting player, being a former first-round pick for the Flames as well. A lot of eyes on Matthew Coronato.
Was this year hard for you to evaluate these guys? Because the team was so bad and they couldn't score, and it's a rebuilding year. Like did you kind of struggle because of that?
Yeah, and you came into the season with okay, the mantra is 1 point better, and the roster really didn't turn over. It was the same group of guys. You thought you would see that same fight in this, and the team just it hit a brick wall in October, and you're just like, oof. And all the expectations that we had coming into the season are all changed because their October was, well, brutal, let's be honest. And you're just like, well, how do you evaluate this now when they're always chasing games? They're always chasing the score. They're always chasing in the standings now. So I'm with you. That's a great point by you, Robert, because I think that's why a guy like Matthew Coronato was so hard for me to grade this year, because you had the expectations, but then the team just absolutely was god-awful.
Because I bet you there's a lot of people that are listening to these report card episodes, and they're probably yelling at their phones or their cars or whatever, and they're saying, this is a team that scored the fewest goals in the NHL. They were 4th last in the league. They were never close to the playoffs. Like, how could you be giving so many B's and A's and those types of grades to these guys? And I guess, like, I would say is my explanation would be, once again, we're grading based off expectations heading into this season, and the expectations for a lot of these players, were pretty low. Like they ended up being the types of players that we thought they were going to be. The reason this team finished so low isn't because half the roster didn't live up to expectations. I think it's because just this team lacks so much talent, really in all aspects of the roster outside of goaltending. Like this is not a high-end squad by any stretch. So even if all these guys had just lived up to career averages and we gave them all a B, they're still missing the playoffs because they don't have the difference makers right now. So I think it's just like a little kind of justification or context as to why we're giving the grades we are.
Yeah, a lot of things, like, I think we forget because of how it ended for the Flames last year, but I think last year they had a lot more bounces go their way. A lot of things went the Flames' direction when they were in that playoff chase to keep them in that playoff chase. And you had guys having career years that you just knew weren't going to be able to duplicate it. Go look back and look what Nazem Kadri did that year, like, and then compare it to this year. Michael Backlund with his career, like there are things that Weegar was a big one there. Like
Wolf was spectacular.
Like guys had career years or close to career years, and you look at the back of their hockey cards, and that's not truly who they are. This season, I thought was a little bit more closer to truly what they are for a lot of guys here, and it changes the equation. It changes the equation when you get off to such a bad start. It changes the equation when you kind of come back down to earth. So grading against expectations are based off of what we thought these players are going to do. It's not. It sounds easy. It's actually really not that easy to do. So, case in point, Ryan Lomberg. Where do we go with Ryan Lomberg here? Because he is a fan favorite. He is a great guy off the room. He had a great video to start off the year with the schedule announcement. Everyone loves him. Everyone wants him back in free agency, this and that. But he brings you nothing on the ice. And so what are your expectations versus what did he bring you? For Ryan Lomberg, I gave him an A because I had no expectations really for Lomberg other than being just what I said. That guy in the room, the guy on the bench to pick one another up, the guy off the ice, the guy that just comes and gives you his all every single night with the energy. He's a hard player to grade because he doesn't do a lot for you on the ice, but man, is he such a character in that room. And I don't think that guy's ever had a bad day in his life. What do you say about Ryan Lomberg's season, and how do you grade him?
Yeah, he's another one of those guys who played up to his level. He kind of brought everything to the table that you thought he was going to bring. So with that in mind, I gave him a B because all you're asking, like if you're the Flames, all you're asking Lomberg to do is provide some toughness, provide some energy, get in the odd fight. If any bit of offense is an added bonus, like if he didn't get a single point this year, I honestly wouldn't care. And then there's the off ice perspective, and it's bring some entertainment to the fans, show off that amazing personality, and then be an incredible teammate. And he did all of those things. So I think with heading into the season, like you said, my expectations were very low from an on ice perspective because we all know what he brings to the table. It's an energy game, and it's a fourth line physical style of game. And I thought that's exactly what he brought to the table. And I don't think you could have asked much more from him from a leadership perspective too. I mean, there were a lot of young players on the Flames this year. And, if you ask them, who were some of the leaders that you looked up to, or some of the guys that took them under their wing. And a lot of them would say Ryan Lomberg. And I think that's all you can really ask for the guy. And, in terms of his outlook, like for next season, whenever the conversation comes up about Lomberg, should they sign him? Should they just let him walk as a free agent? A lot of people talk about, okay, well, where are you going to put him in the lineup? And I think that's the wrong conversation to have, because to be quite honest with you, if I were the Flames, I would sign Ryan Lomberg. And if he played 10 or less games, I would be totally fine with that. I just want him around the team. I want his personality around the team. I want that infectious energy around the team and all your young guys. I think that's really important to have. So he's one of those players where you're literally signing him for his personality, and any sort of added bonus like that he can bring to an on ice perspective, whether it's a goal every now and then or a fight or a hit. Like I said, it's an added bonus because I think the person and the personality is important for this group. So overall, just it was a very Ryan Lomberg season for him, and I thought he was totally fine.
I think Ryan Lomberg's kind of veteran. If you sign him back, he's the kind of guy that you play against those heavier teams because he can play that game. Like he can stick up for your younger players as well. He's not going to play every night. He's not an everyday NHLer, but he can be that perfect 13th, 14th forward for you. You want a guy sitting in the press box eating popcorn, he'll gladly do it for you too, because that guy does not stop smiling. It's incredible. And you kind of want that around your team, around your group. So like, I'm neither here nor there with signing Ryan Lomberg. If they bring him back, great. If they don't, okay, I understand that as well. But at the same time, you're bringing him in not to be a guy to play in your top six. He's not going to ride shotgun with Matt Bay-Gridden on the power play. Like, that's not his game. And so if you base off the expectations and keep them where they should be, Ryan Lomberg's your perfect 14th, 13th forward, a guy who can play, like you mentioned, 10 or a dozen games, whatever, it end up being at the end of the year, and a guy you can rely on. And you all know out there listening, I know you all say, well, where do you play him? Injuries happen, right? Injuries happen. And he's a guy that if he hasn't played in for a month and a half and he's got to step in because, I don't know, Adam Klapka has a broken foot, then you put him in the lineup and he fills a role in that fourth line for you. So that's just kind of who Ryan Lomberg is.
You know who he reminds me of is Paul Bissonnette.
Okay, yeah.
I feel like Paul Bissonnette carved out, a half decent NHL career for himself because of his personality and because he was such a good guy in the locker room. Like, not the best player, not the most effective player, but he understood his role and he was a great leader and a great person to be around. I feel like Lomberg, it's very much a similar type of situation.
I like that. I like that as well. Hey, I'd take Bissonnette's career all day long if I was a hockey player.
Oh, absolutely.
One of the guys we talked about coming over in the trade for Mackenzie Weegar was Olli Maatta. This guy comes in here, and all of a sudden he's a Norris caliber defenseman, can't stop scoring. We didn't really have preseason expectations for Olli Maatta, but when he was traded for, there was a lot of, okay, he's going to take minutes. He's going to be a veteran guy. He is what he is, and you know what you're going to get out of Olli Maatta. Little did we know, we didn't know what we were going to get out of Olli Maatta because apparently he's Bobby Orr reincarnated. How do you grade the small sample size Olli Maatta gave to the Flames? Because I can't help but give him an A because he did way more than I thought he was going to do. He actively was sabotaging the tank, it felt like it some nights, just scoring points after points. And he actually provided really good leadership for some of these younger players on the roster playing beside guys like Hunter Brzustevich. And you needed that because a lot of other guys were getting injured or missing the lineup. And when you have all these young defensemen playing, you needed a veteran to step up, and that's exactly what number 3 did. How do you grade the short tenure of Olli Maatta?
Okay, so like from an actual performance standpoint, yeah, 100% you have to give him an A. Like I would even give him an A+ for how he played. But in terms of how he affected the tank, you give him an F. Like this guy destroyed the
100%. Him and Cooley were just the saboteurs.
They were. If it wasn't for Maatta playing the way he did, I can almost guarantee the Flames would have finished third last. Like there's no doubt in my mind that he was responsible for 1 or 2 points on his own. Like that's how good he was. And to put a little bit of perspective, so if you go back and look at his career high in points in the NHL was 29. In Calgary, he put up 14 points in 21 games. That's a 55-point pace over 82 games. Like he almost doubled his point production from his career year in Calgary. Like that's unbelievable. And this isn't a guy who it's like, oh, this is a breakout season and he just played his 250th game. Olli Maatta's played over 800 games in the NHL. He's been in the league since 2013. This is a guy who has established himself as a shutdown defensive defenseman who will put up anywhere between 15 to 29 points. And he comes to Calgary and he puts up a 55-point pace over 82. Like, I mean, like, good on him. First of all, like, congrats. Like, that's pretty incredible to do at the age of 31 years old when, you think you've already established yourself as a certain player. So good on the guy. And one, I think from like an asset management standpoint, I think it's awesome for the Flames because now they can flip Maatta over the next year or two here, and they can probably get some half decent value for him, whether it's a second or third round pick or something like that. Then all of a sudden the Weegar trade is 4 second round picks and a prospect. Like that's pretty incredible work by Craig Conroy. So shout out to Olli Maatta. And you mentioned the leadership thing, and I thought it was interesting in the locker room cleanout day. Hunter Brstevich, he was asked, who are some of the leaders that have kind of stepped up and helped you this season? And he specifically shouted out Maatta, and he had mentioned that there were a couple times where they were really butting heads on the bench. And I think that's a good thing because, maybe Brstevich sees the game a certain way and doesn't want to make a hard play or doesn't want to make a smart play. He wants to kind of push the offense forward and be creative and all that kind of stuff. But Maatta, I guess, really got in his face and got in his grill and said, no, like, this is the way you play the game at the NHL level. And once again, this is a guy who's played over 800 games. He has 2 Stanley Cups. Like, he knows what it takes to win in the NHL, and he's imparting that wisdom and that knowledge on guys like Brstevich, which I think is really important. Even if they do kind of, clash personalities or bash heads or however you want to describe it, I think it's a good learning experience for a guy like Brstevich to learn from a guy like Maatta. So, yeah, he's definitely an A+ for me. Probably the thing, one of the most surprising stories to come from the Flames year was just seeing how well a guy like Olli Maatta played. Like, I thought he, in his 21 games, I'm like, I'd be happy if he put up 3 or 4 points, but he put up 14. Like, good on him. Yeah, really impressive stuff.
From a competitive standpoint, I love watching 2 guys on the bench who are long-term pairing or their line mates battle one another, because that's the competitive spirit. Hey, we all want perfection. Nazem Kadri was good at that as well, getting after his line mates. He still is. And you like that, and you like when a younger player or a rookie recognizes that, because that's what Brstevich was doing in that interview or in that presser, was was acknowledging that, hey, Maatta's challenging me here because he wants me to be better. He knows I can be better, and he's a great leader for doing so. So Olli Maatta was, if we put the tank aside, was pretty much perfection for the Flames after the trade deadline in his on-ice play and his leadership abilities. The other defenseman we have on our list today this is going to be a very interesting one, because I kind of cheated the system on my grading system here. Zayne Parekh kind of had an evolving season from start to finish with the injuries and the bouncing around where he was playing, going to the World Juniors, that whole 9 yards, the injuries, the talk about he's not big enough, not good enough for the league, to scoring goals, to looking very confident near the end. When you balance it against your expectations, which I try to keep low preseason, he was kind of hitting those expectations at the end of the season here, but he wasn't at the beginning of the season. So it's kind of like, for me, he kind of was at a C level expectations and working his way to an A level grade. So interested to see how you talk about Zayne Parekh and your thoughts on his season, because for me, it evolved throughout the season from a C to an A, back to a B, back to an A. This guy, I can't settle on a single grade for Zayne Parekh, because it's kind of like he had 3 different seasons in one. And it was one that was very trying for Zayne Parekh, but I think at the end of the day is beneficial for number 19. What say you, Robert?
Yeah, it was a bit of a bizarre year. I mean, he starts out being a healthy scratch for the first 2 games of the season, which, I mean, I still disagree with, but that's here nor there. So he starts as a healthy scratch, and then his first 11 games of the year, from the beginning of October to November 7th, when he got hurt against Chicago, he really struggled. You could tell he wasn't quite ready for the NHL level, which is totally fine, because how many 19-year-old defensemen out there can step into an NHL lineup in their first 11 games, really impress? Like, it rarely happens. Like Matthew Schaefer is the exception, not the rule. So, knowing that he was 19, knowing that he couldn't go to the American League and that he was a little outmatched, but also knowing that he was too good for the OHL, like he had to stay in the NHL. And yeah, his first 11 games, I thought that the pace was I thought he really struggled with the pace, and he didn't make quick decisions, and he got hit a lot. Things like going back for pucks in his own end, he would end up going back pretty slow and nonchalantly, and he'd end up getting smashed to get along the end boards. I thought he would hold on to pucks too long. I thought he was making decisions that were very risky. Instead of making like the smart, quick outlet pass to break out of your zone, sometimes he was going for the long stretch pass and had to get around 2 bodies to make the pass, and it just wasn't working. Like even something he's so good at, like walking the blue line. At the beginning of the year, he was struggling with that, and he was turning pucks over the blue line that led to a lot of breakaways against. Like, he he was just a young player that needed to be in the American Hockey League but couldn't, and it was just a little too much for him. But give him credit, from the time he got hurt to the time he got back to the Flames at the beginning of February, I thought he really worked on his game, and I think the World Juniors was critical for him. Going in there and setting the single tournament record for points by a Canadian defenseman, I thought was huge for his confidence. Like, in the World Juniors, he looked like a completely different player. Like, he looked like the Parekh the Flames had drafted, with the goals he was scoring and the passing and running the power play. Like, he was spectacular at the World Juniors. And then he goes to the American League for 5 games for 4 games, and he plays well in 3 of them and puts up 5 points in those 3 games. And then he came back, and from February onward, he looked like a completely different player in the NHL. So he got off to a really rough start, and it's not really his fault. I'm not criticizing him for getting off to that bad start because he was so young and so inexperienced. Like, it's going to take time to learn the NHL game, and I think he proved that. And I know heading into the season, my expectation for him was from October to, say, the end of December. I thought it was going to take him some time to get used to the NHL game, and then come January, he was going to flourish. And it's kind of exactly what ended up happening for him. From February to the end of the year, I thought he showed glimpses of a guy who can be a 70-plus point, running your number 1 power play type of defenseman, an Evan Bouchard or Erik Karlsson type of player. Like, the skill and the talent is unbelievable. The vision and creativity is unbelievable. And I think he's going to be a really good player for a long time. And the progression that he made throughout the year, I thought was really impressive. And, I don't know if he could have learned more. I don't really know if he could have developed more over this season. I thought it was really good for him. I think he would have liked to have played more games. I think he only played 37 games total.
Mm-hmm.
So he would have liked to, have played probably in that 60 to 70 range. But overall, I think you got to be pretty happy with how things finished this year. Like, I'm going into next year thinking that he is a full-time NHL player. He will run the first power play unit all year, and he'll probably be a 35 to 45 point guy in his first sort of full year in the NHL, which is exactly where guys like Erik Karlsson and Evan Bouchard were. And that's kind of what my expectation is. So yeah, I was pretty impressed. I gave him a B+ because the beginning of the season I thought was kind of a C, and I thought the end of the season was an A+ range. And so I just kind of met in the middle there with the letter grade.
Yeah, I like that. That's well put. Really not a lot I can add there on Zayne Parekh. You saw how much confidence means to this player, and it means a lot to a lot of players, but it felt like, especially with Zayne Parekh, once he had that confidence and post-trade deadline, when he knew what he was and where he was going to be pretty much every night, that he just took off. He took everything that happened this year and he kind of used it for his benefit to better his play at the end of the season. And my hope now for him is he carries that momentum into the offseason, and that the offseason can be his best ever. Add the strength that he needs to add to a point. Add this, keep his abilities going, keep his skill set going, and that he hits the ground running in this training camp coming up here. And the big hope for me is he can actually start this season without an injury, without being stretched for some stupid reason, without any of that other nonsense, that he can just play in game 1 and 2 of the season and have a good positive start to the season. I think this will be key for him next year. So for this year, the expectations, it's hard to grade him out, but I like what you said there, Robert. Kind of averages out to be a B+. And so we'll leave it there with number 19. I'm excited for his next year, though. Like, he should be a great player next year. I'm excited to see what he does next year for the Flames.
I'll add just one more point there, because you mentioned the word confidence, which I think is really important. And what I hope this year taught Ryan Huska is that you need to believe in him, and you need to give him opportunity. Like, you can't put him in the lineup one night, take him out the other. Like, for his first 11 games of the season, he never played more than 18 minutes. It was anywhere between 9 to 17 minutes a night. And I think the reason why he got so much opportunity at the end of the year was because of injuries. And had the Flames been 100% healthy, I bet you he doesn't play as much as he did. So, like, what I'm really hoping is, the Flames are going to have 8 defensemen signed next year, and, hopefully they'll trade 1 or 2 of them. I really hope Ryan Huska continues to give Parekh, at least 16 to 20 minutes a night, put him on the first power play unit, and don't healthy scratch him, and don't take away his confidence. Like, continue to really build that, because like you said, like out of all the players on the Flames, I think confidence and self-belief is the most important with Zayne. And I really hope the Flames coaching staff understands that. And I hope that they treat him well next year. And I hope they give him lots of opportunity and believe in him and just keep things positive with him. Because clearly when Zayne gets down on himself, which he did at the beginning of the season, basically from opening night all the way until he played his first World Junior game, his belief and confidence was shattered in himself. So, and I think a lot of that had to do with the coaching staff a little bit. So, I really hope they realize that. I hope they realize that they have a pretty special dynamic player in Parekh. And I hope they coach his strengths, and I hope they don't just beat the crap out of him because he's not like the best defensive player.
Yeah, put him with a guy like Olli Maatta and just let him play his game. Like, just let him play it, and that's well put by you there, Robert. Last guy on our list here. This is an interesting one because I think we're both going to give him a better grade than a lot of Flame fans would give him. I saw your tweets on him earlier this week as well, Robert. Jonathan Hunerdeau had an interesting season, and then you find out he's injured, and then he goes for some surgery, and you and I were pretty hard on him on some episodes, rightfully so at the time, because we didn't know about the injury. We didn't know about the upcoming surgery. And just like what has happened to number 10, like it has completely fallen off. He's like replacement level at times in games. He wasn't affecting games. Then he plays that last game of the year and gets a nice goal against the Oilers, and you feel good knowing that that's how it ends his season. His expectations coming to this season for both of us, I thought were pretty low. And he kind of lived up to those pretty low expectations, so it's kind of hard not to give him a passing C grade, Robert. What do you make of Huberdeau's short season, given what we now know with the injury and the surgery coming that he had? What do you make of his number 10 there in his season?
Yeah, I mean, if we're up to Flames fans yesterday, they would have burned me at the stake for...
Yeah, your comment section was incredible.
And hey, I don't blame people for feeling that way. Like he's been a disaster since coming to Calgary. There's no denying that. But like I agree with you. Like I gave him a C letter grade, and the reason why was because once again, like we're grading off of our expectations for the player heading into the year, and my expectations were, Hunerdeau, he's not the 90-point player anymore. He's now a 50 to 60-point guy. And if he can give you a little bit of 200-foot juice in terms of defensive play and penalty kill, then that's great. But expectations for him were really low, and he went below my expectations for the season. He was worse than what I expected, which is kind of unbelievable to say. Like you said, there were a lot of nights where he was just a complete non-factor, where he had zero outcome on the game whatsoever, and the playmaking is gone, the dynamic offensive ability is gone. It's honestly, it's hard to watch, and it's kind of sad to see to go from a guy who, and everyone always talks about the 115-point Hunerdeau. That was a career year. Hunerdeau was like a legit, 5 years prior to coming to Calgary, he was on pace over 82 games at 90 points or more a year. So he was essentially like a 90-point player coming to Calgary, and his production's been cut in half, which is pretty crazy to see. I don't know if there's like another, like Elias Pettersson comes to mind. Like there's probably two players that I can think of that have dropped off substantially like Hunerdeau has. So yeah, I mean, like I said, overall I give him a C. Expectations heading in the year were pretty low, and he fell below my expectations. And if you meet expectations for me, it's a B. And if you go below that, then we start talking like C plus, and that's why I gave him a C. Yes, the contract is a disaster. Yes, he's not the 90-point player he once was, and for that, his overall tenure with the Flames could be deemed an F. But because of what we know of him now, what type of player he is, and the fact that he's not the same guy that he once was, is why I gave him a C. And like you mentioned, the injuries too. By all accounts, it sounded like he was playing through some pretty serious pain. Like he was getting injections all season long. So playing through pain and all that, taking all that into consideration, that's why I give him a C. And I know a lot of people think that's too friendly or too kind of a grade, but I actually think it's pretty on point.
If we didn't know about the injury and the surgery, it would be pretty easy to sit on the podcast here and just lay into him. We both have done it on the podcast in the past because his on-ice play was awful. It was not good. He was not good. Like I mentioned earlier, at times he was replacement level bad on this roster, and you'd give him an F without question because you just want something from number 10 to be cheered about. Now, using the injury as an excuse for his play might be a little bit of a cop-out, but you kind of got to take that into consideration. Imagine going to your job with a hip that really is useless, and you're just struggling to get through every single task you do, and he's trying to do that as being a high-level athlete. And so it is a cop-out, but at the same time, it's like you feel for the guy, you feel for it, and I'm with you. You can't expect him to be a 90-point guy anymore, and so you and I both give him fairly decent grades because we don't expect all that much from him anymore. We just expect him to show up, be a good pro, and be the leader that the Flames say that he is in that room, and that's pretty much the expectations for Hunerdeau. You don't want to put expectations on him anymore for points because he's always going to fail short of that. That's just not his game anymore. And it's a shame because you look back at what he was and you're just like, man, that was a great hockey player. And you look at him now and you're like, this is just a guy doing cardio. So I think you and I are both nice to him because we realize what he actually is compared to what we wanted him to be. And we've given up the hope that he is going to be a point per game or better player. If he gets just 35 to 40 points, you're kind of thinking, okay, that's kind of what he is now, which sucks. But that's just kind of the reality of where Jonathan Hunerdeau is now in his career. So next year, I'm not sure what to expect of him coming off that major hip surgery. We'll maybe talk about that in another show, Robert, because that hip surgery is it's not a nice one, and it hasn't been kind to people in the past either as well. We've briefly touched on that in past episodes because we'll see what he brings to the Flames next year. What do you make of next season for Jonathan Hunerdeau and where he might possibly be at here, Robert?
Oh, I don't know. I honestly don't know. He's kind of like the Flames. It's like I could see him, being half decent and getting back to, the level he was in 24-25 when he scored, I think it was 27 or 28 goals and put up over 60 points and was a good 200-foot player. I could see him getting back to that now that he's playing pain-free, but I also see a scenario where things, maybe don't go so well and he's now a 35, 40-point player. Like, I think the range of outcomes when it comes to Hunerdeau is quite wide, quite a bit wider than I would have for almost any other player on the roster. So I have no idea what to expect. Because there's been a couple guys that have come back from this surgery, but there's been guys like Nicholas Backstrom and Ed Jovanovski as a couple examples who it's literally ruined their career and they've never been the same type of player. And so if that happens to Hunerdeau, then he might be a 30, 40-point guy if he can truly bounce back. And now he's playing pain-free and can skate properly and all that kind of stuff. Maybe he does become a 60 to 65-point guy for the next few years. I have no idea. I don't know.
It's going to be interesting to see. I'd be surprised if he comes in here and blows anyone's doors off, and I would be surprised if he comes in here and is completely ineffective and worse than anybody on the roster. So I think it's somewhere in the middle, and hopefully he can actually come back and play at some point for the Flames. It'll be very interesting.
Well, yeah, and for the sake of the long-term future of the Flames, I think a really important thing is within the next 4 years, I think you really need to move off that contract somehow. And if Hunerdeau can become a half decent 200-foot player, basically if he can be the 24-25 version of himself, if he can be that player for the next 3 years, then all of a sudden with the cap rising, you can probably eat a little bit of his salary and you could probably move him along with a draft pick or something, and it wouldn't be totally out of the question like it is right now. So like, just for the sake of the Flames and their asset management and their cap space moving forward, they have to be able to somehow move him over the next 3 or 4 years. So the only way that's going to happen is if Hunerdeau has a pretty significant bounce back over the next couple years here. So I'm cheering for him because he seems like a really good dude and you want good things to happen to him. And then at the same time, you also want good things to happen with the Flames as well, because there's going to come a time here over the next 3 or 4 years where they're going to need to sign guys like Zayne and Matvey Gridin and Cole Rechny and Potter and Wittenbach and if their first round pick this year, hopefully it's a Gavin McKenna. Like they're going to need to sign these guys, and having $16.75 million tied up in Huberdeau and Sharon Govich, that's a lot of cap space for a team that needs to sign a lot of young players. So I hope he is able to turn things around.
All right. Happy draft lottery to you all. Or if you've already seen the draft lottery, listen to this after. Hopefully you're celebrating the great victory that's going to come down. Robert and I have both prayed to the hockey gods in our own way, and we're putting that good chi into the air. So hopefully the draft lottery goes well for the Flames, or I should say the draft lottery will go good for the Flames. And we're celebrating next week on the podcast with Robert and I. We appreciate you making us part of your podcast rotations. You can find Robert at Ring of Fire CGY and myself, Vintage Johnny 84. And of course, the show is Red a Mile Rundown wherever you get your podcast. Robert, anything else we missed on today's podcast before we let these folks go and enjoy the rest of their weeks?
No, just whatever you do for good luck, do it over the next 24 hours for the love of God. Do everything you can, everything in your power to make sure the Flames win the first or second overall pick.
Lucky jerseys, lucky rabbit's foots, prayer seances, whatever you got to do, sacrifice. I don't care. Let's get it done. Let's bring Gavin McKenna to Calgary because that would be a ton of fun. Enjoy the draft lottery. Enjoy the playoffs because they have been tremendous. And hopefully we see some more good action. We'll see you guys next week here on the podcast. We appreciate you. Enjoy your weeks.